I cannot believe that I'm about to say the word week 7, but I am. Week 7 power rankings. Let's do it. I'm Pete Mundo. Heartland College Sports is where you find us. We have a shakeup inside of the top 3 in this week's power ranking. So we'll count it down from 16 down to number 1 or up to number 1. I'm a down to number 1 kind of guy. Some of you might be an up to number 1 kind of guy. Whatever kind of guy or gal you are, what do we want you to do? Subscribe right now to the channel. That's the only way that we ask you to help us, because it helps other people find the show and like the video as well. Thank you, as always, for doing that and for being here as a part of the show. Let us know where you're watching from tonight, and we will make sure that we give you a shout out when we can, whether it's on YouTube, podcast, radio. We are grateful for you, as always, at Heartland College Sports. So, at number 16 in the power rankings this week, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. No need to move them off of that 16 slot. They, of course, lost to Arizona this past weekend, and it was not a pretty game. The final on that one, 41-13. Pokes are right where they were 1 week ago in the basements in the Big 12 football power rankings, and there is absolutely no reason to move them off of those number 16 slots over the last couple of weeks. At number 15, we've got the West Virginia Mountaineers, also steady in that 15 slot. Now, they didn't lose by the margin. They've lost their first 2 Big 12 games in, but it was not pretty at BYU. They got a backdoor cover. It happens. I was on BYU minus the points. I got bid on that one. But you know what? We'll live to see another Saturday. That much I'm confident in. Next up, it is UCF at 14, moving down 1 slot from 13 to 14 after losing to Kansas this past weekend at home. They had some moments they looked all right, but, I'm moving UCF down 1, and that's because Colorado, despite their loss at TCU, moves up 1 slot. I actually thought that Colorado played one of its better games of the season in that loss. It was not a 2-touchdown game. It was a game that Colorado was in most of it. TCU, you want to talk about a late cover. Oh, my goodness. TCU got a late touchdown. That gave them the cover on the minus 13.5. That was wild. That's college football. But that was not a 2-touchdown game. Colorado played them tough on the road, and I'm going to move Colorado up 1 slot for that performance in a loss over UCF, who had a tough game at home. So that's part of the reason for that flip-flop there between Colorado and UCF. At number 12, I am going with the Kansas Jayhawks, right where they were last week. They went on the road. They got a win, but it was UCF. UCF's in my bottom 3 right now when it comes to the power rankings. So I'm not going to give KU a ton of credit, but they come in at number 12. At number 11, the Kansas State Wildcats are sitting there at 11. This after Kansas State decides, we had a good game against UCF, but why keep a good thing going? Let's make sure we blow it late against Baylor and have a slew of mistakes from your star players like Avery Johnson, some questionable coaching decisions by none other than Matt Wells, throw Chris Kleiman in there, and things are messy for Kansas State. They're 2-4. Granted, they've lost 4 games by a total of 13 points. That's how close they are to being 6-0. But this is not horseshoes. This is college football. So with that, Kansas State comes in at number 11, where they were last week. At number 10, Arizona. They blow out Oklahoma State after they lost in Iowa State last weekend. I can't give them too much credit for a blowout win over Oklahoma State. We will say that about a lot of teams this year in the Big 12. Oh, they blew out Oklahoma State. Great. Join the club. A lot of people are doing that. But Arizona worthy of staying in that number 10 slot. At number 9, the Houston Cougars, moving down 1 from number 8 after losing to Texas Tech. They lost by 24. That will happen to a lot of other teams as well this year in the Big 12. So I didn't punish them, but I moved them down 1 slot to number 9. At number 8, flip-flopping there, the Baylor Bears. Baylor, of course, got the win over Kansas State in comeback fashion. They were down 2 touchdowns in the second half. And with some help from the Wildcats and some poor play clock management, what do we get? We get A comeback victory for the Baylor Bears at a time when the fan base may have very well turned on Dave Aranda. Instead, he delivered a win, and Baylor's sitting there 1-1 in the Big 12, and they're squarely in the mix to make a trip to Arlington. I'm not predicting it for Baylor. I'm just saying that you got to say about the Bears, they are in the conversation. So at 2-1 in the Big 12, I guess it is, they're right where many of us expected them to be at this point in the season. Where do we go from here? Let's keep the rankings for the Big 12 going to number 7. And at number 7, where am I going? I'm giving it to the Utah Utes, coming in at number 7 in the power rankings this week. So they're in at number 7. They were on a bye week this past week, and I'm just moving them down one slot because of what happened in front of Utah this past week. At number 5, let's go to the TCU Horned Frogs. Number 6, the TCU Horned Frogs. Down from number 4 last week. I know they got a win, but I didn't think they looked great against Colorado. I was underwhelmed by the performance on both sides of the ball. Got to get the running game going. Got to figure that out. Josh Hoover can't do everything. He missed some passes as well. So I'm moving TCU down 2 slots from 4 to number 6. I'm leaving at number 5, BYU. I thought about moving BYU down 1 and TCU down 1. I said, no, I'm moving BYU I'm just keeping them at 5, and I'm dropping TCU 2 slots to number 6. BYU, I think, continues to look better. The offense is becoming more explosive under Bear Bachmeier. That's part of what we're starting to see with him at the helm. The true freshman quarterback is really getting more and more confident and comfortable, it seems like, with each passing game. So BYU getting a convincing win over West Virginia. Not a great West Virginia team. Heck, not a good West Virginia team is where I've got the Cougars this week in my Big 12 power rankings. At number 4, I'm going with the Iowa State Cyclones. They are down a notch from number 3. They went on the road and lost to Cincinnati, and the game was not as close as the final score would indicate. It didn't feel like a one-score game most of that game at Nippert Stadium, but Iowa State felt like a team that was maybe due in hindsight. They dealt with some big injuries in the secondary. They were off to another 5-0 start. And, they had won some convincing games, but going on the road, tough environment, motivated team. And Iowa State, especially on defense in that first half, did not look like its old self, getting pushed around. Rarely say that about a John Haycock defense, but got to admit that's how it looked in the first half, especially against the Cincinnati Bearcats. At number 3, there we have them. Cincinnati cracking that top 3 for the first time in the history of my Big 12 football power rankings. I went back and looked. Now, I know they've only been in the league for a couple of years, but I have never had Cincinnati sitting there in the top 3. And I've got them at number 3 this week in the Big 12 football power rankings. So Cincinnati, after that domination against Iowa State in impressive fashion, comes in at number 3 this week. And the Bearcats just missing out in the AP poll as well this past week. At number 2, Arizona State slips into that number 2 spot this week. So they were on a bye. They are where they were last week. I see no reason to move them off of that slot at number 2. So I'm keeping them right there. And we've got Arizona State coming in at number 2 in the power rankings this week for Big 12 football. And of course, they go on the road to play Utah this weekend. That feels like, I don't want to say an elimination game this early, but it certainly is a big deal in terms of how the Big 12 is going to shake out going forward as we approach the halfway mark. And that means the number 1 team in the Big 12 football power rankings, Texas Tech. Texas Tech continues to dominate its opponents. They are beating everybody by at least 24 points. That includes Houston this past weekend. And the Red Raiders are the team to beat in the Big 12, hands down. They're at the top of my Big 12 football power rankings. Let's dive through those power rankings 1 through 16 for Heartland College Sports. At number 1, it's Texas Tech. At number 2, it's Arizona State. Number 3 is Cincinnati. Number 4, Iowa State. Number 5, TCU. Actually, number 5 is BYU. So let me do that again. 1 is Texas Tech, 2 Arizona State, 3 Cincinnati, 4 Iowa State, 5 BYU, 6 TCU, 7 Utah, 8 Baylor, 9 Houston, 10 Arizona. At number 11, it's Kansas State. Number 12 is KU. 13 is Colorado. 14 is UCF. 15 is West Virginia. And Oklahoma State pulls up the rear at number 16. Those are the Big 12 football power rankings for this week. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Before we get to the mailbag, just check right now. Have you liked the video? If you haven't, just do it on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel here as well. And you know what else? If you're on the podcast and you haven't left a 5-star rating and review, could you do that for us? It'll take you 30 seconds. You can send me a screenshot to PeteMundo@HeartlandCollegeSports.com. I've been sending out merch to people who are leaving nice reviews, and that's a tremendous way to help us, and we try to hook you guys back up in return as well with some free Heartland merch. Let's get to your questions now in the mailbag. All right, get your questions in right now in the live chat. And I'm going to go to the Facebook page as well and see what you guys have here in the Facebook page. I posted earlier about getting in the questions for the mailbag, and let's do that right now. Here we go. Richard asks here on the Heartland College Sports Mailbag, I'm Pete Mundo. How terrible is the Associated Press poll? Richard, I will say it is absolutely awful and terrible, to use your word. The AP poll has been a joke for a very long time. It is something I've railed on as a guy who covers the Big 12 for a very long time. It is comical how this conference gets treated by the AP poll. And I've been doing this for over 10 years now on this website. Part of the reason HeartlandCollegeSports.com began is because I was in Oklahoma covering Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I then moved to New York City for a bunch of different media gigs. I'm freelancing. I'm watching a lot of Big 12. And I said, I'm so sick of the ESPN BS and bias. So I start this website with a laptop and nothing else. I had no idea what I was doing. But I start Heartland College Sports because I was sick of the ESPN and the SEC bias. Little did I know what 10 years later would bring. If I thought building this operation was going to take the time and the effort and the sweat equity that it took, I may not have done it. But it has been a 10-year labor of love, and you guys have been with me every single step of the way. But one of the earliest conversations we ever had on the show and on the website was about this very thing. The AP poll being comical. And it's another year of the Big 12 getting treated like garbage in the AP poll. I mean, I said this on X as a joke, and you can follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, just search Heartland College Sports. I said it on Saturday as a joke that Florida, unranked, beating number 9 Texas, would result in Florida going to number 5 and Texas falling to number 10. I was joking, but also kind of not really. Now, Texas did fall out of the top 25, which they should have. Florida obviously jumped up well into the top 25. And listen, for the most part, I'm okay with that, right? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say they shouldn't necessarily be there. Wait, are they not there? Excuse me. Florida's not there. Look at that. Okay, so Florida's not in the mix right now. But that says more about Texas than it does anything else, right? But for the Big 12, see, I'm just assuming, this is how bad it is. I was just assuming Florida was in there because of how bad the AP poll is. Okay, so there's my little bit of credibility and credit for the SEC and for the AP poll. I'll leave it at that. But for the Big 12, you've got Texas Tech at number 9. They have not won a game by fewer than 24 points. That's insane. They're behind Alabama. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. They're behind Indiana. I don't think that makes much sense either. After that, Oklahoma, A&M, Ole Miss, Oregon, Miami, Ohio State, whatever, fine. But Texas Tech has no business being behind Alabama in the AP poll. Go on down from there when it comes to the Big 12. You've got BYU ranked at number 18, sitting there at 5-0 on the season, behind a 2-loss Notre Dame because obviously who you lose to matters more than who you beat, because we have to factor in what we thought you were going to be going back to July. Oh, but they beat Purdue and Boise State and Arkansas. I'm not saying Notre Dame's not good, but my gosh, the credit they're getting for losing games is tremendous, because it's good to be a blue blood. That's the reality. Arizona State has a close loss on the road to Mississippi State, and, they fall out of the top 25. They got to claw their way back in after a couple of good wins against Baylor and TCU. And now they're sitting there at number 21 at 4-1. You've got Iowa State falling to 22. Cincinnati is on the outside looking in. They just missed out on the AP top 25. But Cincinnati should absolutely be in. Once again, it should be about what you've done, who you played, actual wins that you picked up. Cincinnati has that. They just beat Iowa State. I mean, to me, Iowa State should be somewhere, let's say 23, 24, 25. And then Cincinnati should fairly be 20, 21, 22. That's what my AP poll would look like. But that's not how these AP poll voters do it. And there's such clear bias against the Big 12. Arizona State loses a tough game on the road in non-con. They're totally gone, right? That's how it works. There has always been bias in this poll, and it's arguably worse than it's ever been. And I'm not a fan of rankings until, let's say, the middle of the season, because what some writer in Tuscaloosa thought was going to be the case in July based on reading preseason magazines, especially in a world of NIL and transfer portal, which makes it harder than ever to figure this stuff out. You just can't sit here and tell me that should make any difference at all when we're sitting here on, October 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. That should have no bearing on anything going on right now. But it does. Alabama got waxed against Florida State in the opener. And Florida State is sitting there right now at 3-2. Okay? They've lost to Virginia and now Miami. And we're still putting Alabama ahead of Texas Tech? That is a joke. And my buddy Josh Pate, we wrote about this on the website, heartlandcollegesports.com. What a run Josh is on. Very happy for all his success. I mean, I really am. He's been a guest on this show. He's taken time to be a part of the show at times, which I really appreciate. And I know he's had a huge last couple of months. The dude's flying private, for crying out loud. I saw that on his Instagram. I was like, Josh, baby, save me a seat one time, would you, when you go into a Big 12 game? But I know he's on board with the joke that's become the AP poll, and he's fighting for Tech, as are a lot of us, and we appreciate that. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. Make sure right now you are subscribed to our channel for everything Big 12 and college football. Let's get to some of your other questions here in the mailbag. Let's see. Kenny asks, should Oklahoma State forfeit the rest of the season and watch others on Saturday from the classroom? Well, that would be assuming they'd be better off in the classroom, Kenny, and I'm not sure that that's something that we should assume, right? Might as well give us some entertainment, give the other fan base some entertainment, and get blown out and play a game. Just saying. Dylan Ramos. Dylan asks on Facebook, are Tech and BYU on a collision course for Arlington? No, not yet. You can't really say that about anybody outside of Texas Tech right now in the Big 12, that anybody is on a clear path to Arlington. I believe you can say it about Texas Tech. I don't think you can say it about BYU. And I'm a big, you know me, I'm buying BYU stock big time. I have for the last few weeks. But they've got a stretch here in a couple of weeks. Utah, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, TCU, and Cincinnati on the road. That is a stretch for BYU. Now, I'm big on what Bear Bachmeier is doing, and what I said in the offseason was that if you were going to beat BYU with a true freshman quarterback, I thought the time was going to be the first half of the season. That's good for BYU going into those games with Bachmeier having some more confidence and some more reps. But I can't sit here and say BYU is Arlington bound with that gauntlet of a stretch in this league. with games on the road in Ames and Lubbock and Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati. No way. And I don't know if Dylan's a BYU fan or a Texas Tech fan or maybe both. I don't know. I'm just saying that's overconfidence right there if you're a BYU fan thinking that you're on a collision course for Arlington because of this 5-0 start. And I'm saying this as someone who is buying BYU stock. Can't get there, and I'm not there yet. No way, no how. Let's see. Connor asks, is it silly at this point for opposing Big 12 fan bases to say that Texas Tech is still a paper tiger because they have not played anyone? What more do they need to do? Well, I mean, whoever's saying that isn't paying attention. Houston is much improved. They were undefeated coming into the game. And I believe Utah is still a team that can end up in a Big 12 championship game. That was my preseason Big 12 prediction, Texas Tech over Utah. I'm not going to back off it right now. Now, we'll see what happens this weekend against Arizona State. I'm not backing off it. I still think Utah's a really good team in the trenches. Offensive and defensive lines are stout. Quarterback situation's much improved. So anyone calling Texas Tech a paper tiger is not paying attention to, first off, the games, how they played in those games, who they played. No way, no how. Not a chance. What else? Get your questions in right now on Facebook Live. Let's see. What else? What do you guys got for me here? I'm just trying to roll through some of your comments and questions, find something good. Dun, 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 dun. Short Bus predicting rain in Salt Lake City. Who has the advantage? Arizona State or Utah? That's a great question. I would say the rain would help Utah more than Arizona State. Now, my fear is that Devin Dampier gets sloppy with the football, and I'm just doing that based on, guy in that spot, big-time Power 4 game. Arizona State's defense has been, at times, excellent. Hasn't been consistent all the time, but has been excellent. So if we're getting rain in Salt Lake City on Saturday, edge Utah because of the trenches and because their home field and because of their strength on the offensive and defensive lines. Little concerned about Dampier, but still give me the edge to Utah if we do get that rain on Saturday in Salt Lake City in what is going to be one of the great games of the early or first half of the Big 12 season. Let me see. I'm trying to read all of these that I can here. Dun, 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 dun. Bunch of you were saying I got to respond to Kenny's comment or Kenny's question. I can't find a question from Kenny here. I'm going through everything. Here we go. Pat, would College Game Day even consider going to Lubbock for BYU versus Texas Tech if both teams are unbeaten going into the game? This is from Pat in Lubbock. College Game Day should go to Lubbock at some point this season. My fear is that they may not. And I say that because Texas Tech is breaking the mold of college football. One thing you notice when analysts talk about Texas Tech, they're oftentimes saying, boy, they spent a lot of money. As if it somehow downplays what they've done and what they're doing. And I find that obnoxious. I find it disingenuous. As if Oregon's not spending a lot of money? As if Ohio State's not spending a lot of money? Oh, you're okay with that because those are SEC and Big Ten teams. Oh, that's all right because they're kind of like, if they're not blue bloods, Ohio State is. Oregon's kind of been on that outside looking in area being a blue blood, so that's okay. But Texas Tech, they have some nice players once in a while. Guys like Patrick Mahomes, but, they're not like national contenders. They're just buying a team. Oh, like everybody else who has money is doing right now in college football. So ESPN, and I'm speaking broadly here, has been, I think, completely unfair in its coverage of Texas Tech by and large. So I don't think they're dying to come in Lubbock, but if Texas Tech stays undefeated and they go into that game against BYU with a record of what would be at that point 9-0, they're probably a top 5, if not on the brink of being a top 5 team. If BYU is undefeated, and I think that is a bigger question at this point in time, but if BYU is undefeated, they would be 8-0 going into that game in Lubbock. They're probably in the top 10 to top 15. Now, it's going to be harder for BYU to do based on the schedule that they've got coming up. But if they are, I mean, if College Game Day at that point doesn't go to a Big 12 venue, then, yeah, I mean, the conference should just close up shop with ESPN and just say, you know what, the deal's done. I mean, we'll just go to TNT full-time or something here because this is a joke. If they were to actually give the Big 12 a cold shoulder, if that scenario does play out the way you're suggesting there, Pat, that would be an utter embarrassment. But hey, when it comes to ESPN, nothing surprises me. What would surprise me is if you are not subscribed right now to the channel. Please make sure you're doing that. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. Thank you, as always, for being here. Mrs. Flight asks, I'm hearing... Oh, I heard them say, I assume that means ESPN or somebody there, a 2-loss SEC team would get a bye over an undefeated Big 12 team. If a 2-loss, well, no, because no, that's impossible. This year they're doing it, top 4 teams, regardless of conference, will get the byes. They're not going to reseed 1 through 12 with the top 4 being conference champions. That's over. There is no way that an undefeated 13-0 Texas Tech is ranked behind a 2-loss SEC team. Whoever said that's an idiot. Or as their head so far up the SEC's butt, I mean, they're staring at the throat. They can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's ridiculous. There's no way. Big Lyman, could the Big 12 get 2 teams into the college football playoff? If so, how do we get there? Yeah. Undefeated Big 12 team versus 1-loss Big 12 team. 1-loss Big 12 team upsets undefeated Big 12 team. Boom, 2 1-loss teams. They both get in. If Tech's 12-0 loses to, say, 1-loss BYU or, 1-loss Arizona State or something like that, although Arizona State would have 2 losses because they're going to be playing each other here coming up in a couple of weeks. You get the point, though. You'd have to look at the schedule, but undefeated Texas Tech, just to use an example, going up against 1-loss somebody. 1-loss somebody wins the Big 12 championship game. They should both get in that scenario. All right? So let's see. What else? Good question, Scott. Who in the Big 12 has the best shot at the Heisman? Is it Sawyer Robertson because of the stats? Baylor would need to finish something like 9-3, which feels unlikely to me. Oh, that is a great question. I mean, Sawyer's got the stats, but I'm with you there, man. I mean, Baylor going 7-5 is not going to result in them having a guy as a Heisman finalist. That just seems very unlikely to me right now based on where everything is at in this conference. You'd say, well, is it the quarterback at Texas Tech? Is it Baron Morton? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think he's going to be the dude. I would still say Sam Leavitt. Arizona State's got the schedule where if Sam Leavitt, the quarterback for the Sun Devils, has some big-time games coming up. They've got Utah on the road this weekend. Then they've got Texas Tech. They go to Ames in a few weeks as well. If Sam Leavitt has some all-world games here coming up the next month of the season and Arizona State's humming along as a 1-2-loss team, Sam Leavitt can still get himself into the Heisman Trophy conversation. So I would say it's Sam Leavitt there, Scott. That's where I would go right away. So great questions here coming in tonight. Kevin says, what about Sorsby at Cincinnati? Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right. That's fair. That's totally fair. I'm not going to take that away. They're sitting there at 4-1. He's had some great games. They just don't have a lot of games in the next few weeks where you're like, man, staple game for Brendan Sorsby. They go to Utah in November. They got BYU at home and TCU to end the season. but do they have that monster moment for a guy like Brendan Sorsby? I'm just not seeing it right now. Chris asks, why can't Baylor draw fans? The stadium was pathetically empty. Not a good look at all. Baylor looked like a group of 5 program with the way that stadium was filled at McLean on Saturday. You know, I've been to McLean Stadium for a game. It was probably back in 2017, maybe. Yeah, it was 17. I saw Texas and Baylor. And it was a good atmosphere. It wasn't amazing. It was good. It was, you know, a nice college football atmosphere. I couldn't believe what I saw on Saturday against Kansas State. That was embarrassing. I don't know what's going on. Baylor fans have dropped into my mentions and saying that, you know, basically the university has ruined the college game day experience there in Waco. That's a shame if that's true, but I think the fans have to take some responsibility. If you can buy a ticket and walk into a game, it's Waco, Texas. Go support your team. Go do it. This team can still compete for a Big 12 championship. Go do it. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports. Subscribe right now to the channel. Please, that's all we ask you as always. We appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you soon. We got predictions and previews coming up this week, so make sure you are here on heartlandcollegesports.com. Join the free forums as well on the website. We'll talk to you soon. Go Big 12.